Speech off.
Hey guys, it's Gia here. We are going to get into our first reading video, so get comfy and settle up and settle into your beanbag chairs. You know, grab some snacks and popcorn if y'all want. Grab your favorite blanket or stuffed animal. You know, grab a drink, whatever y'all want, and let's get started. Okay, the e-reader is starting up. And I kind of want to show you guys before we get into reading how I download books too. So that way y'all know how I do it. Cuz I kind of want to teach you. Oh, yeah. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Okay, we go to advanced search first. Ugh. No internet. Really? Ugh. This is so annoying. There. Okay, connected. Okay, good. Title. Okay. I'm gonna search for Berenstain Bears. Berenstain Bears. So you put your title in the search field, and then you go here. No results. Seriously. Oh. Titles. Third title. Berenstain. No results. Okay. Button, subject, series, author, title. Alright, we'll look up Charlotte's Web. Charlottes. WEB. Two results for Charlotte's Web, everyone. Charlotte's Web, White EB, Charlotte's Web, White EB, Charlotte's Web, White EB. Okay. Alright. Download complete. Okay. Titles. I'm gonna see what series there is, guys. I'm gonna see. I'm gonna see what series there are, everyone. I'm gonna see what series there is too, because I want to have a lot of books to read to you guys. Okay, title, author, series. Let's see. What's in a series? I don't know. Okay. No results. Ugh. Okay. Titles. I'm trying to look for another book. Well, I can't find any other book right now, so we'll just go back to the main menu, go to book reader, book list. Okay, here we go. Fahrenheit 451. Okay. Beginning a book. All right, ready, guys? Hold on. Okay. Come on. Okay, Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. Volume 1 of 2. Volumes, pages 1 to 10 and 1 to 140. Published by Simon and Schuster. New York. Further reproduction or distribution. In other than a specialized format is profited, produced the Braille for the Library of Congress, National Library Service for the Blind and Physically Handicapped by Braille International Inc. 2004. Copyright renewed 1995. Ray Bradbury. Forward. Copyright 1993. Ray Bradbury. Introduction for this edition. Copyright 2003 by Ray Bradbury. Special symbols used 999 in this volume. Computer Braille code. It says many begin computer Braille code indicator. Which every computer Braille code indicator. Knowledge. 46 period. Book from the book jacket. Information, classic edition. A novel. Celebrate the 50th anniversary of Timeless Classic with a special edition featuring a new introduction by the author and a message that is more relevant today than when it was first published. Since the late 1940s, Ray Bradbury has been revered for his work of science fiction and fantasy, with more than 5 million copies The print Fahrenheit 451, originally published in 1953, remains his most acclaimed work. Fahrenheit 451 is the temperature at which book paper burns. Fahrenheit 451 is a novel set in the perhaps near future when officemen burn books. Forbidden by a prevented by a totalitarian brave new world regime. The hero, according to Mr. Bradbury, is a book burner who suddenly discovers that books are flesh and blood, ideas, and cry out silently when put to the torch. Very today, when libraries and schools in this country and all over the world are still burning certain books, Fahrenheit 451 remains a brilliantly readable and suspenseful work of even greater impact and timelessness. Ray Bradbury has published some 500 short stories, novels, plays, and poems. Since his first story appeared in Weird Tales when he was 20 years old, for several years he wrote for Alfred Hitchcock Presents and the Twilight Zone, and in 1953 wrote the screenplay for John Hutchins's Moby Dick. From 1985 to 1992, he adapted his stories for his own half-hour show on cable television's USA network. The National Book Foundation in 2000 awarded their gold medal to Ray Bradbury for his contribution to American literature. He lives in Los Angeles, California. Visit us online at www.simonsays.com, which figuring in its implications, Mr. Bradbury's account of this insane world, which bears many alarming resemblance to our own, is fascinating. The New York Times fiction. This book is a work of fiction. Names, characters, place, and incidents either are products of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual events or localities or persons, living or dead, is entirely coincidental. By Ray Bradbury. Let's all kill by consent. One more for the road, from the dust returned. Irker than the eye. A hand and the oblivion. Machines. A graveyard for lunatics. The Toynbee convector. Death is a lonely business. Something wicked this way comes. The haunted computer and the android Pope. The stories of Ray Bradbury, where robot mice and robot men run round in robot towns. Long after midnight, dandelion wine. When elephants last in the dooryard. Bloomed the Halloween tree. I sang the body electric. Switch on the night. The illustrated man. The Martin Chronicles. R is for rocket. Dark Carnival. The machineries of joy. The anthem sprinters. A medicine for melancholy. Moby Dick. Screenplay. Fahrenheit 451. Golden Apples of the Sun. So is for space. Green Shadows. White Whale. Hold on. This one with gratitude is for Don Congdon. Contents. Volume 1. Page 1. A new introduction. Ray Bradbury. 1. Burning Bright. A foreword by Ray Bradbury. 8. Introduction. 25. Fahrenheit 451. 1. The Hearth and the Salamander. 38. It says Volume 2. 2. The Seven and the Sand. 3. Burning Bright. This Braille edition contains the entire text of the print edition. Okay, that's good to know, guys, isn't it? Fahrenheit 451. 1. It says a new introduction by Ray Bradbury, March 12th, 2003. What is there new to be said about Fahrenheit 451? I have written 3 or 4 introductions in the past 30 years, trying to explain where the novel came from and how it finally finally arrived. The first thing to be said is that I feel very fortunate to have survived long enough to join with people who have been paying attention to the novel in this past year. The novel was a surprise then and is still a surprise to me. I've always written at the top of my lungs, and from some secret motives within, I have followed the advice of my good friend Federico Fellini, who, when asked about his work, said, "Don't tell me what I'm doing. I don't want to know." The grand thing is to plunge ahead and see what your passions can reveal. During the last 50 years, I have written a short 2,500 word early version of the novel titled The Fireman, which appeared in Galaxy Science Fiction magazine, and several years later added another 2,500 words for its publication. Ballantine Books, occupying a house with a new baby daughter. We had considered my trying to find somewhere that was a bit quieter to do my work. I had no money at that time to rent an office, but wandered around UCLA. One day, I heard typing in the basement of the library and went down to see what was going on. I found that there was with a room with 12 typewriters that could be rented for 10 cents per half hour. Excited at the prospect, I brought a bag of dimes with me and moved into the typing room. I didn't know what the various students were writing at their typewriters, and they hardly knew, nor did I know what I was writing. If there is any excitement to the novel at all. I think it can best be explained by the fact that every 2 hours or so during the next week and a half, I ran up and downstairs and in and out of the stacks, grabbing books off the shelf, trying to find proper quotes to put in the book. I am not a researcher, and my memory is not all that accurate for things that I have read in the past. So the quotes that you find in the book were wonderful accidents where pulling a book off the shelf and opening it was anywhere at all. I found an amazing sentence or paragraph that could occupy a position in the novel. This early version took exactly 9 days, and I spent 9.80 seconds in it, not realizing that the book had some sport of long life ahead. In the years since its first publication, I have written a full 2-act play and spent 2 summers in Connecticut writing an opera based on its text. The book seems to have life that goes on recreating itself. If I try to find its genesis in the years prior to 1950, I would imagine one would turn to certain stories like Burning Bright and a few other tales that appeared in my early books. The main thing to call attention to is the fact that I've been a library person all of my life. I sold newspapers until I was 22 and had no money to attend college. But I spent 3 or 4 nights a week at the local library and fed on books over a long period of time. Some of my early stories tell of librarians and book burners and people in small towns finding ways to memorize the books so that if they were burned, they had some sort of immortality. The main surprise for the book occurred when I wrote the short story, The Pedestrian, in 1949. I had been accosted by the police one night while I walked on a Los Angeles street. One friend, the police wanted to know what we were doing when walking with just our aim, and talking occupied us. I was irritated. I was irritated, or I was so irritated by being stopped and asked about walking, that I went home and wrote the story, The Pedestrian, concerning a future where pedestrians were arrested for using the sidewalks. Sometime later, I took the pedestrian for a walk, and when he turned a corner, he encountered a young girl named Clarice McClellan, who took a deep breath and said, "I know who you are, from the smell of kerosene. You're the man who burns books." 9 days later, the novel was finished. What a wonderful experience it was to be in the library basement, to dash up and down the stairs, renovating myself with the touch and the smell of books that I knew, and I knew, books I knew, and books that I did not know until the moment when the first version of the novel was finished. I hardly knew what I had done. I knew that it was crammed with metaphors, but the word metaphor had not occurred to me at that time in my life. It was only later in time when I got to know the word and realized that my capacity for collecting metaphors was so complete. In the years of writing my 2-act play and the opera that followed, I let my characters tell me things about their lives that were not in the book. I had been tempted to go back and insert these truths into the old text, but this is a dangerous practice which writers must refuse. These truths, while important, could ruin a work done. Years before, in writing the play, my fire chief, Beatty, told me why he had become a burner of books. He had once been a wanderer of libraries and a lover of finest literature and history. But when real life diminished him, when friends died, when a love failed, when there were too many deaths and accidents surrounding him, he discovered that his faith, hold on guys, I'm gonna move around a little bit. I gotta adjust myself. There we go. His faith in the books had failed because they could not help him when he needed the help. Turning on them, he lit a match. So that is one of the fine things that came out of the play and the opera. I'm glad to be able to speak of it now and tell what Beatty had in his background. After the book was published in the following years, I've had hundreds of letters from readers asking me what became of Clarice McClellan. They were so intrigued with this fascinating, strange, and quixotic girl. Hold on. Strange and exotic girl that they wanted to believe that somewhere out in the wilderness with the book people, she had somehow survived. I resisted the temptation to bring her back to live in future editions of my novel. I left it to Franciscois Troffitt, the Troffitt, in his film version of Fahrenheit 451 in 1966. To give Clarice a return to life, even though he had changed her name and given her extra years. 9 of maturity, which at the time I thought was a great mistake, but she did survive. She did survive to the end of the film, and at that time, I decided that Troffitt with correct when I wrote the first version of the play. I allowed Clarice to survive among the book and in the wilderness. The same practice occurred when I wrote the opera. She was too wonderful a character to be allowed to die, and I realized now that I should have allowed her to appear at the end of my book. That being said, the book is complete and untouched. I will not go back and revise anything. I have a great respect for the young man that I was when I sat down in that basement room with a bag of dimes and plunged into the passionate activity that resulted in the final work. So here, after 50 years, is Fahrenheit 451. I didn't know what I was doing, but I'm glad that it was done. Burning Bright, a foreword by Ray Bradbury, February 14th, 1993. 5 short jumps and then a huge leap. 5 ladyfinger firecrackers and then an explosion. That was about describes the genesis of Fahrenheit 451. 5 short stories written over a period of 2 or 3 years caused me to invest $9.50 in dimes to rent a pay typewriter, the basement library typing room, and finish the short novel in just 9 days. How so? The small jump, the small firecrackers first. In a brief story, Bonfire, which never sold to any magazine, I imagined the long literary thoughts of a man on the night before the world was the world was coming to an end. I wrote a number of tales like this 45 year or so ago, not as predictions, but as sometimes blabbered warnings. In Bonfire, my hero made lists for his great love. Some of it ran like this: the thing that bothered William Peterson most with Shakespeare and Plato and Aristotle and Jonathan Swift and William Faulkner, and the poems of Robert Frost, perhaps John Donne and Robert Frick. All of these, mind you, tossed into the bonfire. After that, he thought of bits of kindling for that's what they would become. He thought of the massive the massive Michelangelo sculpture, and El Greco and Reiner, and on on. For tomorrow they would all be dead. Shakespeare and Frost, along with Huxley, Picasso, Swift and Beethoven, and his extraordinary library and quite ordinary self. Not long after Bonfire, I wrote a much more imaginative, I think, tale about the near future, bright Phoenix, in which a town librarian is threatened by the local patriot, by God, in regard to a few dozen books aching to be burned. When the fire makers arrived to kerosene the volumes, the librarian invites them in, and instead of stonewalling, uses somewhat subtitle and absolutely obvious weapons to defeat them. As we move about the library and encounter the reading inhabitants therein, it becomes obvious that there is more behind their eyes and in between their ears than might be guessed, as the chief censor burns books on the lawn outside the library. He takes coffee with the town librarian and speaks to a waiter in the cafe across the street, who comes with a steaming pot of coffee. Hello, Keats, I said. Season of mists and mellow fruitfulness, said the waiter. Keats said the chief censor, his name, isn't Keats. Silly, I said. This is a Greek restaurant, right? Plateau. The waiter refilled my cup. The people had already, hold on, my cup. The people had always some champion, whom they set over them and nurse into greatness. This and no other is root from which a tyrant springs when he first appeared. He is a protector, and later, coming out of the restaurant, Bernice collided with an old man who almost fell. I grabbed his arm. Professor Instinia, I said. Mr. Shakespeare, he said. And as the library closes and a tall man exits, I say, "Good evening, Mr. Lincoln." And he replies, 7 years. The book burning town got hearing this. Realizes that the whole town has hidden books by memorizing them. There, when books everywhere, hidden the people's heads, he goes mad, and the story finishes. To be followed by more stories with a similar similar bent. The Exiles. Concerning the characters in all the Oz and Tarzan and Alice books, and all the characters in the Strange Tales, written by Hawthorne and Poe. Exiled to Mars, where one by one their ghosts melt and smoke and fly away to a final death when the last book on the earth are cremated. In Usher Volume 2, my hero collects all the intellectual book burners of Earth, those sad souls who believe fantasy is bad for the mind, distances them at the Red Death costume ball, and consists them to drop in a tarn as the second house of Usher vanishes from sight in countless fathoms. Now for the fifth hop before the grand leap. Okay. Some 42 years ago, give or take a year, I was walking and talking with a writer friend in mid Wilshire, Los Angeles, when a police car pulled up and an officer stepped out to ask what we were doing. Putting one boot in front of the other, I said, "Too much. The smart aleck that was wrong," answered the policeman. Repeated the question. Too big for my britches," I replied, breathing the air. It says talking, conversing, walking. The officer frowned. I explained, it's illegal. Hold on, wait. Oh, illogical. Oh, sorry about that. It's illogical. You're stopping us. If we had wanted to burgle a joint or rob a shop, we would have driven up into a car, burgled or robbed and driven away. As you see, we have no car, only our feet. Walking, said the officer, just walking. I nodded and waited for the obvious truth to sink in. Well, said the officer, don't do it again. And the police car drove away. Enraged by this Alice in Wonderland encounter, I ran home to write the pedestrian concerning some future time when all walking was forbidden and all pedestrians treated as criminals, and it was rejected by every magazine in the country and wound up in the reporter Max Esselins splendid political magazine, one of the best in the nation. Thank God for that squad car encounter. The curious question my half-dumb answers for if I hadn't written the pedestrian, I might do a few months later have taken my midnight criminal stroller out for another jog around the city when I did what started as a word or idea association test turned into a 2,500 word novel entitled The Fireman, which I had immense difficulty selling, for it was the time of the un-American activities committee run by just Parnell Thomas, long before Joseph McCarthy arrived on the scene with Bobby Kennedy at his elbow for further hearings. What about the library? Basement typing room. Okay, gotta itch my toe. Oh. Okay. What about the library basement typing room? And those $9.50 worth of dimes with which I bought time and space in a room with a dozen other students at a dozen other typewriters. Being relatively poor in 1950, I needed an office I couldn't afford, wandering around the the UCLA campus, 1 noon. I heard typing sounds from below and went to investigate with a glad cry. I saw that it was indeed a rental typewriter typing room where for 10 cents a half hour one could sit and create without the need of a proper office. I sat and 3 hours later realized I had been seized by an idea that started short but grew to wild size. Days End. The concept, which so riveting, I found it hard at the sunset to flee the library basement and take the bus home. Reality, my house, my wife, and our baby daughter. I cannot possibly tell you what an exciting adventure it was. Day after day, attacking the rentable machine, shoving in dimes, pounding away like a crazed chimp, rushing upstairs to fetch more dimes, running in and out of the stacks, pulling books, scanning pages, breathing the finest pollen in the world, book dust, with which to develop literary allergies. Then racing back 15 down blushing with love, having found some quote here, another there, to shove or tuck into my burgeoning myth. I was like Melville's hero. Madness maddened. I had no way to stop. I did not write Fahrenheit 451. It wrote me. There was a cycling of energy off the page into my eyeballs and around down through my nervous system and out through my hands. The typewriter and I were Siamese twins, joined at the fingertips. It was a special triumph because I had been writing short stories from the age of 12 through high school and into my 30s, thinking that I might never dare to leap off a cliff into a novel. Here then was the beginning of my daring jump without parachute into a new form, wild with enthusiasm for my rushing around the library, sniffing the bindings and relishing the characters. I soon found, as I had told you before, no one wanted the fireman. It was rejected by just about every magazine in the field, and with finally published Galaxy magazine, whose editor Horace Gold was braver than most in that time. What caused my inspiration? There had to be a root system of influence, yes, that propelled me to dive head first into my typewriter and come up dripping with hyperbole, metaphor, and smiles about fire print and Papyrus. Of course, there was Hitler torching books in Germany in 1934. Rumors of ally in his match. People and tied boxes. Plus long ago, the witch hunts in the Salem in 1680, where my 10 times great grandmother Mary Bradbury was tried, but escaped the burning. But most of it was my romantic background in Roman, Greek, and Egyptian mythology. Starting at the age of 3, yes, 3 years old, 3, when I heard Tut was raised from his tomb and appeared in the weekend news gazettes. In all his gold panoply, and I wondered what he was, and asked my folks. So it was inevitable that I would hear or read about the triple burning of the Alexandrian Library, 2 of which were accidental, 1 on purpose. Knowing this at 9, I wept for strange child that I was. I was always an inhabitant of of the high attics and haunted basements of the Carnegie Library in Waukegan, Illinois. As I began, so I continued. There was nothing more wildly exciting than running to the library every Monday night when I was 8, 9, 12, and 14. My brother running ahead to always win. Once inside the old lady librarian, they were always old ladies in my childhood. Weighed my books against my weight and disapproving of the inequality. More books than boy set me free to run home and lick the pages to turn them. My madness continued as my family motored across the country in 1932 and 1934 on Route 66. No sooner was our old Buick stopped than I was out and down the street to the nearest library where there must live differently Tarzan's different TikToks, different beauties and beasts than the ones I knew. Once out of high school, I could not afford college. I sold newspapers on the street corner for 3 years and inhabited the downtown library 3 or 4 days a week, often writing short stories on dozens of those small on those small notepads strewn about libraries as a service to readers. I emerged from the library at the age of 28 years later during a lecture at a university. The president of the college, hearing of my total immersion in literature, presented me with a cap, cloak, and diploma, and officially graduated me from the library, knowing I would be lonely and in need of further instruction. I took with me into life my poetry teacher and my short story teacher from LA. Hi. The later Jeanette Johnson died. or in her 90s. Only a few years ago, after inquiring as to my reading habits. In the late 40 years, I probably have written more poems, essays, stories, plays, and novels about libraries, librarians, and authors than any other writer today. I have written poems like Emily Dickinson, Where Are You, Herman? Melville called by name, Last Night in Here, Sleep, and another claiming Emily and Mr. Poe as my parents, and a story in which Charles Dickens moved into my grandparents' upstairs cupola room in the summer of 1932. Calls me Pip, and allows me to collaborate on finishing A Tale of Two Cities. Finally, the library in Something Wicked. Finally, in the library in Something Wicked, this way comes the pivotal meeting place at midnight for an encounter between good and evil, Mr. Holloway and Mr. Dark. All the women in my life have been teachers, librarians, or booksellers. I found my wife, Maggie, in a bookshop. In the spring of 1946. But back to the fireman and its fate. Once it was published in a pulp magazine, how did it grow to double its original size and move out into the world? In 1953, two fine new things occurred. Ion Ballantine started a hard and soft cover venture in which novels in both formats would be published on the same day. He saw in Fahrenheit 451 the macus of a proper novel if I would add another 2,500 words to the first 2,500 to the first 2,500. Could it be done? Remembering your investment of dimes and galloping up and downstairs from the UCLA stacks to the typing room, I feared for retiring the book and rebaking the characters. I am a passionate, not an intellectual writer, which means that my characters must plunge ahead of me to live the story. If my intellect caught up with them too swiftly, the whole adventure might mire down in self-doubt and endless mind plays. The best answer was to set a deadline and ask Stanley Kaufman, my Ballantyne editor, to come to the coach in August that would ensure I thought this Lazarus book, rising from the dead. This plus conversation I was having in my head with the fire chief, Beatty, and the whole idea of future book burnings. If I could regenerate him, let him stand and deliver his philosophy, no matter how cruel or lunatic I got, that the book would shake itself awake to follow him. I went back to the UCLA library, armed and waited with a pound and pint of 10-cent pieces to finish your dime novel with Stan Kaufman bearing down on me from the sky. I finished the last revised page in mid-August. In mid-August, I was in Balint. Stan stirred me on, Stan cheered me on, with his ebullience, in the midst of which a phone call came that stunned us all. John Hutchin called, invited me to his hotel apartment, and asked if I would enjoy coming to Ireland for 8 months in order to write the screenplay of Moby Dick. What a year, what a month, what a week. I took the assignment, of course, leaving a scant few weeks later with my wife and 2 daughters to spend most of the next year overseas, which meant hurrying to finish minor revisions on my fire brigade. By this time, we were deeply into the McCarthy period. McCarthy had bullied the army into remove or tainted books from the overseas libraries. Former general, now President Eisenhower, one of the few brave ones that year, ordered the books put back on the shelves. Meanwhile, our search for a magazine publisher to print portions of Fahrenheit 451 came to a dead end. No one wanted to take a chance on a novel about past, present, or future censorship. It was then that the second great new thing occurred. A young Chicago editor, minus cash, but full of future vision, saw my manuscript and bought it for $450, all he could afford to be published in issues number 2, 3, and 4 of his about to be born magazine. The young man was Hugh Hefner. The magazine with Playboy, which arrived during the winter of 1953, and to shock and improve the world. The rest is history. From that modest beginning, a brave publisher in a frightened nation survived and prospered. When I saw Hefner at the opening of new offices in California a few months ago, he shook my hand and said, "Thanks for being there." Only I knew what he was talking about. There remains only to mention a prediction that my fire chief, Beatty, made in 1953, halfway through my book. It had to do with books being burned without matches or fire, because you don't have to burn books, do you? If the world starts to fill up with non-readers, non-learners, and non-knowers if the worldwide screen basketball basketball in screen basketball, the football itself, and the football itself, to drown the MTV no beaties are needed to ignite the kerosene, or hunt the reader if the primary grades suffer meltdown and vanish through the cracks and ventilators of the schoolroom, who after a while will know or care. All is not lost. Of course, there is still time if we judge teachers judge teachers, students, and parents, hold them accountable on the same scale. If we truly test teachers, students, and parents, if we make everyone responsible for quality, if we ensure that by the end of its 6th year, in every child in every country could live in libraries to learn almost by osmosis, then our drag 23 street gang rape and murder scores will suffer themselves near zero. But the fire chief in mid-novel says it all, predicting the 1 minute TV miracle with 3 images per second and no respite from the bombardment. Listen to him. Know what he says. Then go sit with your child, open a book, and turn the page. Well, then, at the last, what you have is the love affair of a writer with the stacks of a sad man, Montag, and his love affair, not with the girl next door, but a knapsack of books. What a romance this is! The maker of lists in Bonfire became the bright phoenix librarian who memorized Lincoln and Socrates, became the pedestrian who walked late to become Montag, the man who smelled of kerosene, who met Clarice, who sniffed his uniform and told him his dreadful life function which led Montag to show up in my typewriter one day, 40 years ago, and beg to be born. Go. It says, I said, Montag thrusting another dime into the machine, and live your life, changing it as you go. I'll run after. Montag ran. I followed. Montag's novel is here. I am grateful that he wrote it for me. Introduction. 25. It is always easier to recall the genesis of a short story than to remember the root system that went into the development of a novel. A short story is usually a collision, abrupt and over. In a few hours, a novel grows more slowly until suddenly it is there. My short stories hit and run, astonishing me with the way they grab, shake me, and let me go by my novels. Variably surprise me in another way with the fact they have been around so long, and I have blind to the fact of those existence. To make a few comparisons. I visit my doctor with a sore throat. When I was 22, feeling my neck, I asked him to peer down my throat and tell me what was going on with all that strange stuff. Those tendons, muscles, bits of gristle, and so on. My doctor, Dolly explored, smiled clearly his throat, and said, "Mr. Bradbury?" Yes, I said. You are suffering from, yes, case, go on, of discovery of the larynx. I gasped. Yes, have all kids of muscles, bones, lumps, and protuberances that are perfectly normal. He said, you just haven't explored tomorrow. Before I went home, feeling my hidden possibilities, the lump known as the medulla oblongata, my elbow, my collarbone, my shins, my ankles. And I sat down and wrote a story titled Skeleton, about a man who discovers that that lodged in his flesh is a gothic symbol of horror, something fresh from a sorcerer's pit, or dank closet. Death itself, in the shape of a skull, and accompanying bones. Another time, I was stopped by police for walking at night, and in anger wrote a story, the pedestrian, carrying the entire ridiculous episode one step further into a future where all pedestrians are suspect and criminal. On a third occasion, I wrote the word "the playroom" on paper as a word association test. Asked myself what kind of playroom, and answered a room in the future with wall-to-wall television on each wall, and 3 hours later finished a suspense terror story retitled the Velt. Looking over my list of published short stories, I can almost without exception summon up the event that caused the tale: walking on the beach with friends. I drew with a popsicle stick in the sand, and said idly, "Wouldn't it be terrible if we Picasso lovers, one and all, always desiring a Picasso, hold on, always desiring Picasso, suddenly stumbled on him here, drawing on the beach late one day. I stopped. Give me a pencil and some paper, quick," I said, and wrote it down. That that night I wrote in a season of calm, of calm weather, in which a Picasso fanatic does meet old Pablo himself on the Spanish coastal sand at sunset, drawing with the same stick held in my fingers. But what about novels? Now, don't they ever occur with a single lightning strike of great force and fury at the others? I imagine yes. For me, no. They always circle around me from a distance and wait for me to see. They have been there a long while. I wrote a series of stories about Mars. Forgot them, went off to New York to meet various publishers who said, yes, we'll publish your stories if only you'll give us one novel to print with them. I went back to my room at the UMCA brooded and suddenly realized that all the Martian stories fell into an atmosphere, a pattern, a place, a time. By midnight that night, I had done an outline of a book published 8 months later as the Martian Chronicles. A similar pattern occurred in writing Dandelion Wine. Short stories suddenly articulated themselves into a revelation on the novel was finished before I knew I had even started it. Fahrenheit 451 had a slightly different history. I imagine its real root system goes back to my great and abiding love of libraries. From the time I was 9 on up through my teens, I spent at least 2 nights a week in the town library in Waukegan, Illinois. In 29, the summer months, there was hardly a day I could not very found or I could not be found, lurking about the stacks, smelling the books. Very imported species. Drunk on them even before I read them. Later, as a young writer, I found the best way to inspire myself just to go to the library in Los Angeles and wove about pulling books from shelves, reading a line here, a paragraph there, snatching, devouring, moving on, and then suddenly writing on any handy pieces of paper. Often I stood for hours at the film cabinet tables, scribbling on those small bits of paper, kept for note taking by researchers, afraid to quit and go home while the fever was on me. It is obvious by now that I ate, drank, and slept books of all types and sizes, colors and colors and countries. My tastes ran shallow and then deep, narrow and then broad. All the ways from John Carter, warlord of Mars, to Aldous Huxley, from Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon. In the town papers, Thomas Wolfe, prowling those same mysterious and vibrant library stacks at the closing hours of night, and when Mr. Wolf passed on along the aisle, I think. Here came Hamlet's father's ghost. The other way, followed by Pip and Mr. Pickwick and Marley's Scrooge, in dire need of saving. All these I spoke in voices to myself within the library's green shaded gloom, and on the summer lawn declaimed to friends. It followed then that when Hitler burned a book, I felt it as Kinley, please forgive me, as his killing a human, for in the long sum of history they are one and the same flesh, mind or body, put to the oven is a sinful practice, and I carried this with me. I passed countless firehouse doors and patted the coach dogs there and admired my tall reflection in the down lung brass poles. And I did pass the firehouse often, coming and going to the library, nights and days in Illinois as a boy. And I find among my file notes many pages written to describe the red trucks and coiled coiled hosses and clump booted firemen. And I recall one night when I heard a scream from part of my grandmother's house and ran to a room and threw open a door to look and shriek myself. For there, climbing the wall, was a bright monster. It grew before my eyes. It made a great oven roaring sound and seemed fantastically alive as it ate of the wallpaper and devoured the ceiling. It was, of course, a fire, but it seemed a blinding beast. Blinding beast. I'm sorry, guys. Blinding beast. And I have never forgotten it and how it froze me to the spot before we ran to fill a bucket and kill the thing dead. Perhaps it was all these memories of 1,000 nights in the friendly warm, huge dark with pools of green, every lamp lit, libraries and the fire station and the fine dish fire. Visiting our house itself, laced through the later knowledge of new fireproofing chemicals that caused Fahrenheit 451 to grow from notes to paragraphs to story to novel. In any event, a day did come when I set myself a task larger than any before. I wanted to write a short novel and have it as truthful as my stories. A novel that is with a skin around it and its own essence and being sacked up inside, being hit and run over by a short story is exhilarating. But how does one get hit and run over and exhilarated by such a long thing as a novel? How does one stay exhilarated day after day so the whole damn thing stays honest, so one does not begin to rationalize and spoil the process, become self-conscious, and ruin the whole. I decided I must write the story in an emotional blaze. In about 9 days, I made the roughest kind of outline. All that I really knew about the novel was that I had a fireman myself named Montag in some future year, a book burner who suddenly discovers that books are flesh and blood ideas, and cry out silently when put to the torch. I knew that if I could not write the 2,500 word version of this of this in said 9 days, I would fail, for I had already learned that self-consciousness is the enemy of all creativity. The writer who stopped to glance in the mirror dubs himself by pontiff mounts the throne and makes declaration from thereon which put the countryside to sleep. I must make a haste then in order to be emotional. In order to be emotional and very emotional, in order to be very truthful indeed. By time later, when finished to go back and think about some unsolved problems. The order the order to emotionalize them and make them and make them true. Well, I had good luck and a fine rousing hunt and chase. The first draft was indeed 33, finished in 9 days, and worked 2 years later. I sat down again, having stirred around in my subconscious some further extensions of ideas in the first short version, which was published in a magazine under the title The Fireman. I sat down by another... What are you doing? Oh, okay. By another 9-day schedule to add words and scenes and turn the novella into a novel of some 50,000 words. Again, an emotional process. Again, as before, I knew that plot could not be imagined ahead of the event, that you had to trust your main character to live out his time to run before you followed and found his footprints in the snow. Those footprints, after the fact, found in the snow, are plot, but they can only be examined to intelligently after the emotional sprint, or your actor must quit the stage. In Ballet, any dancer who asked himself what steps comes next must freeze. Any man who takes a sex manual to bed with him invites frigidity, dancing, sex, writing a novel, all are a living process. Quick thought, emotion, making yet more quick thought, and so on, cycling around. Intellectuality. Then, in order to work in a novel, must be insulated. Hold on. What the flip? What is the word? Encapsulated. Okay. In emotional action. Or one winds up with a hybrid sport which works neither as essay nor drama. The purely intellectual novel risks being mere fad or fantasy, and dies as soon as taste shifts. I find now, after the fact, chances are Fahrenheit 451 might well be around for a few years. For while Senator McCarthy has been long dead, the Red Guard in China comes alive, and idols are smashed, and books all over again are thrown into the furnace. So it will go one generation, printing another generation, burning yet another, remembering what is good to remember, so as to print again. As for the title, in doing my second longer version of the novel, I decided I might well use the temperature at which book paper catches fire. I telephoned the chemistry department at several universities and found no one who could tell me the right temperature. I made inquiries. I made inquiries also of several physics professor. Then still ignorant, I slapped my forehead and muttered, "Fool! Why not ask the why not ask the why not ask the hold on. Why not ask the fire department?" I called the nearest station. Just a moment, the fire chief said. A long silence, and then the voice came back on the line. Book paper catches fire at 451 degrees Fahrenheit. Perfect. Oh, God. Perfect, I cried. And perfect it was. First two versions of a book, then two titles, and one of them at last. Absolutely right and fine. And now, very late in the day, a motion picture was out directed directed out by France's most excellent young director, Franciscois Truffaut, starring Julie Christie as Mildred, and Clarice as Oscar. Hold on. And Clarice and Oscar Werner as Montag. And what do I think of the film? I have heard those cries in the past of outraged authors whose books have just been gang raped by a studio. Such is not the case, luckily, with me. I think that that Truffaut has captured the soul and essence of the book. He has been careful and subtle in his shadings and motions. He has He has escaped making a technological James Bond film and made instead the love story of not a man and a woman, but a man and a library, a man and a book, an incredible love story indeed. In this day when libraries once more are burning across the world, I am very grateful. Finally, I remember something else that has just come back to me. Fahrenheit 451 was written in its entirety in the basement of the library at UCLA on a pay typewriter, into which every half hour I had to feed 10 cents. I wrote, hold on. I had to feed 10 cents. Okay. I wrote into a roomful of students who didn't know what I was doing there. Just as I didn't know what they were doing there, perhaps some other novelist within that basement room, working away, I should like to think so. What finer place is there to work than to work in such a library, deeps. But here I take leave and put you into the hands of myself, named Montag, and another year with a running nightmare, a book clasped into his hand, and a book hid safe in his head. Please go with him a little way. 1966. RB. Come on. Okay, if they give you ruled paper, write the other way. Juan Ramon. Jimia's something. I don't know. Won the hearth and the salamander. It was a pleasure to burn. It was a special pleasure to see things eaten, to see things blackened and changed with the brass, the brass nozzle in his fist, with this great python spitting its venomous kerosene upon the world. The blood pounded in his head, and his hands were the hands of some amazing conductor, playing all the symphonies of the blazing and burning to bring down the waters and charcoal, ruins of history with his symbolic helmet numbered 451 on his head and his eyes all strange. Hold on. 451 on his childhood head, and his eyes all orange flame with the thought of what came next. He flicked the igniter, and the house jumped up in a gorging fire that burned the evening sky red and yellow and black. He strode the swarm of fireflies he wanted above. All like the old joke to shove a marshmallow on a stick in the furnace, while the flapping pigeon winged books died on the porch and lawn of the house, while the books went up in sparkling whirls and blew away on a wind turned dark with burning. Montag grinned, the fierce grin of all men. Singed and driven back to flames. 39. He knew that he knew that when he returned to the firehouse, he might wink at himself, a minstrel man, burnt court in the mirror. Later, going to sleep, he would feel the fury smile still gripped by his face, by his face muscles in the dark. It never went away. That smile, it never ever went away as long as he remembered. He hung up his black beetle colored helmet and shined it. He hung his flame proof jacket neatly. He showered luxuriously and then whistled whistling hands in pockets, walked across the upper floor of the fire station and fell down the hole at the last moment when disaster seemed positive. He pulled his hands from his pockets and broke his fall by grasping the golden pole. He slid to a squeaking halt. The heels on the heels 1 inch from from the concrete floor. Downstairs. He walked out of the fire station and along the midnight street toward the subway, where the silent air propelled train slid soundlessly down its lubricated flue in the earth, and let him out with a great puff of warm air onto the crash tiled escalator rising to the suburb. Whistling, he let the escalator waft him into the still night air. He walked toward the corner, thinking little at all about nothing in particular. Before he reached the corner, however, he slowed as if a wind had sprung up from nowhere, as if someone had called his name. The last few nights, he had the most uncertain feelings about the sidewalk, just around the corner, here moving in the starlight toward his house. He had felt that a moment prior to his making the turn, someone had been there. The air seemed charged with a special calm, as if someone had waited there quietly, and only a moment before he came simply turned to a shadow and let him through. Perhaps his nose detected a faint perfume. Perhaps the skin on the backs of his hands on his face felt the temperature rise at this one spot where a person's standing might raise the immediate atmosphere 10 degrees for an instant. There was no understanding it. Each time he made the turn, he saw only the white unused buckling sidewalk, with perhaps on one night something vanishing swiftly across a lawn before he could focus his eyes or speak. But now tonight he slowed almost to a stop. His inner mind reaching out to turn the corner for him, had heard the faintest whisper, breathing, or was the atmosphere compressed merely by someone standing very quietly there, waiting. He turned the corner. The autumn leaves blew over the moonlit pavement in such a way as to make the girl who was moving there seemed to, or there seemed fixed to a slidden walk, letting the motion of the wind and the leaves carry her forward. Her head was half bent to watch her shoes stir the circling leaves. Stir the circling leaves. Her face was slender and milk white, and in it was a kind of gentle hunger that touched over everything, with tireless curiosity. It with a look almost of pale surprise. The dark eyes were so fixed to the world that no move escaped them. Her dress was white, and it whispered. He almost thought he heard the motion of her hands as she walked, and the infantily small sound. Now the white stir of her face, turning when she discovered me, or when she discovered she was a moment away from a man who stood in the middle of the pavement, waiting. The trees overhead made a great sound of letting down the dry rain. The girl stopped and looked as if she might pull back in surprise, but instead stood regarding Montag with eyes so dark and shining and alive that he felt he had said something quite wonderful, but he knew his mouth had only moved to say hello, and then when she seemed hypnotized by the salamander on his arm and the phoenix DSC on his chest, he spoke again. He spoke again, of course. He said, you're our new neighbor, aren't you? And you must be. She raised her hand from his professional symbols. The fireman. The fireman, her voice trailed off. How oddly you say that. I'd have known it with my eyes shut, she said slowly. What, the smell of kerosene? My wife always complains, he laughed. You never wash it off completely. "No, you don't," she said in awe. He felt she was walking in a circle about him, turning him end for end, shaking him quietly, and emptying his pockets without once moving herself. Kerosene, he said, because the silence had lengthened, is nothing but perfume to me. Does it seem like that really? Of course, why not? She gave herself time to think of it. I don't know. She turned to face the sidewalk. 43. Going toward their homes. Do you mind if I walk back with you? I'm Clarice McClellan. Clarice, Guy Montag, come along. What are you doing out so late, wandering around? How old are you? They walked in the warm, cool, blowing night on the silver pavement, and there with the faintest breath of fresh apricot and strawberries in the air, and he looked around and realized this was with impossible. So late in the year, there was only the girl walking with him now, her face bright as snow in the moonlight, and he knew she was working here, was working his questions around, seeking the best answers she could possibly give. Well, she said, I'm 17 and I'm crazy. My uncle says the two always go together. When people ask your age, he said, always say 17 and insane. Isn't this a nice time of night to walk? I like to smell things and look at things, and sometimes stay up all night walking and watch the sunrise. They walked on again in silence, and finally she said thoughtfully, you know, I'm not afraid of you at all. He was surprised. Why should you be? So many people are afraid of firemen. I mean, but you're just a man after all. He saw himself in her eyes, suspended in two shining drops of bright water, himself dark and tiny. The fine fine detail, the lines about his mouth, everything there, as if her eyes were two miraculous bits of violet amber that might capture and hold him intact. Her face turned to him now was fragile, milk crystal, one soft and one and constantly light in it. It was not the historical light of electricity, but the strange and uncomfortable and wear and gently flattering light of the candle. One time, as a child in a power failure, his mother had found and lit a last candle, and there had been a brief hour of rediscovery of such elimination that space lost its vast dimensions and drew comfortable around them, and they mother and it soon alone transformed, hoping that the power might not come on again too soon. And then Clarice McClellan said, "Do you mind if I ask how long have you worked at being a fireman?" Since I was 20, 10 years old ago. Do you ever read any of the books you burn? He laughed. That's against the law. Oh, of course. It's fine. Work. Monday burn. Millet. Wednesday white man. Friday Faulkner. Burn 'em to ashes. Then burn the ashes. That's our official slogan. They walked still further, and the girl said, Is it true that long ago firemen put fires out instead of going to start them? No, houses have always been fireproof. Take my word for it. Strange. I heard once that a long time ago houses used to burn by accident, and they needed firemen to stop the flames. He laughed. She glanced quickly over. Why are you laughing? I don't know. He started to laugh again and stopped. Why you laugh when I haven't been funny and you answer right off. You never stop to think what I've asked you. He stopped walking. You are an odd one, he said, looking at her. Haven't you any respect? I don't mean to be insulting. It's just I love to watch people too much, I guess. Well, doesn't this mean anything to you? He tapped the numerals, 451, etched on his star-collared sleeve. Yes, she whispered. She increased her pace. Have you ever watched the jet cars racing on the boulevard down the way? You're changing the subject. I sometimes think drivers don't know what grass is or flowers because they never see them slowly, she said. If you showed a driver a green blur, oh yes, he'd say that's grass. A pinch of blur, that's a rose garden. White blurs are houses. Brown blurs are cows. My uncle drove slowly on a highway once. He drove 40. Oh God. He drove 40 miles an hour, and they jailed him for 2 days. Isn't that funny and sad too? You think too many things, said Montag. Uneasy. I rarely watch the parlor walls, or go to races or fun parks. So I've lots of time for crazy thoughts, I guess. Have you seen the 200-foot long billboards in the country by the town? Did you know that once billboards were only 20 feet long, but cars started rushing by so quickly they had stretched the advertising out so it would last. I didn't know that. Montag laughed abruptly. Bet I know something else you don't. There's dew on the grass in the morning. He suddenly couldn't remember if he had known this or not, and it made him quite irritable. And if you look, she nodded at the sky. There's a man in the moon. He hadn't looked for a long time. They walked and they walked the rest of the way into silence. Hers hers thoughtful, his a kind of clutching and uncomfortable silence in which he shot her accusing glances. When they reached her house, all its lights were blazing. "What's going on?" Montag had rarely seen that many house lights. "Oh, just my mother and father and uncle sitting around talking. It's like being a pedestrian, only rarer. My uncle was arrested another time. Did I tell you for being a pedestrian? Oh, we're most we are most peculiar. But what do you talk about?" She laughed at this. "Good night," she started up her walk. Then she seemed to remember something and came back to look at him with wonder and curiosity. Are you happy?" she said. "Am I what?" he cried. But she was gone, running in the moonlight, her front door shut gently. Happy of all the nonsense, he stopped laughing. He put his hand into the glove hole of his front door and let it know his touch. His touch. The front door slid open. "Of course, I'm happy. What does she think I'm not?" he asked the quiet rooms. He stood looking up at the ventilator girl in the hall, and suddenly remembered that something lay hidden behind the grill. Something that seemed to peer down at him. He moved his eyes quickly away. What a strange meeting on a strange night, he remembered. Nothing like it, save one afternoon a year ago when he had met an old man in the park, and they had walked. Montag shook his head. He looked at blank walls. The girl's face was there, really quite beautiful in memory, astonishing in fact. She had a very thin face, like a dial of a small clock, seen faintly in a dark room. In the middle of a night, when you wait to see the time and see the clock telling you the hour and the minute and the second, with a white silence and a glowing all certainty and knowing what it has to tell of the night. Of the night passing swiftly on toward further darknesses, but moving also toward a new sun. What asked Montag of that other of that other self? The subconscious idiot that ran babbling at times quite independently of will, habit, and conscious. He glanced back at the wall, how like a mirror to her face. Impossible, for how many people did you know that refracted your own light to you? People were more often. He searched for a smile, found one in his work torches, blazing away until they whiffed out. How rarely did other people's faces take of you and throw back to you your own expressions, your own innermost trembling thought. What incredible power of identification the girl had. She was like the eager watcher of a marionette show, anticipating each flicker of an eyelid, each gesture of his hand, each flick of a finger. The moment before it began. How long had they walked together? 3 minutes to 5. Yet how large that time seemed now. How immense a figure she was on the stage before him. What a shadow she threw on the wall with her slender body. He felt that if his eyes itched, she might blink, and if the muscles of his jaw stretched imperceptibly, she would yawn long before he would. And then we'll stop right there for today. We'll stop at why he thought now that. Okay? Shutting down. Okay. Alright, guys. That's the end of the reading video for today. I hope y'all like it, and I'm gonna go relax because I gotta save my voice because my friends are gonna be hanging out with me as well as my boyfriend, so I gotta relax for a little bit, and I'll see y'all tomorrow. Have a great Wednesday.